Okay, so yeah, uh, so good day everyone, and thanks everyone for joining on this Saturday. So thanks for your support for our community. So we'll just start off with the introduction about Talklify, and I'll just say a small introduction about ng-Keralam. So what is ng-Keralam? So ng-Keralam is a community where we do events focus on Angular tech stack. We do events on last Saturday every month, and you can join in our meetup group and you can get updates of our meetup events. So today we have a speaker called Jeff. So he is author of the ngx aws deploy and also co-organizer of Dutch Angular group and the member of xlayers core team, and he currently works at Strictly as a senior software developer, and he has a passion for everything and related to the web, contributes to a variety of open source projects like ng-Rx and the Angular CLI. So he's going to talk about Angular builders, the cool kid under the CLI hood. So over to you, Jeff.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the nice introduction. And just let me know that thank you for inviting me to your community. Happy to be here, and let's get started. So I will just quickly go over the introduction of myself again. I work at a company in the Netherlands called Stiply, a digital signature solution. As already mentioned, I'm one of the organizers of the Dutch Angular group, where we do monthly events, similar like you. I'm the member of xlayers, and xlayer is a open source project where you can convert your sketch files basically to Angular code, but also React code, Vue code, and that kind of stuff. So you could definitely check it out if you're doing something with Sketch and want to easily convert it to a specific framework. I'm the author of ngx AWS deploy. This is basically a deployer that you can easily deploy your Angular application to AWS S3, and I'm the author of a couple of CLI plugins. So before we begin, I want to mention what this talk is not, and it's not the way to create a builder. This is my way of building a builder for the Angular CLI, but of course, feel free to mix and match everything you read out there. It's just a way. And before we know what builders is, I already want to mention it's you shouldn't do anything with a builder, and there are reasons for that, and you will see this in the slides upcoming. Before builders were there, to know the concept of builders, we need to go to Angular version 8 and before. Before Angular version 8, we got a command that's called ng-eject, and what ng-eject did was basically outputting a webpack config. And with this webpack config, we were able to change it to our specific needs. For example, if you need a specific plugin for Webpack to, I don't know, maybe do something with Sass or less or whatever, because of your project needs, you needed to eject the configuration of the Angular CLI. And here is where builders came in, basically. Because Angular builders are basically function. And if you look at the Angular documentation, they state a builder is a function that will run when a specific command is executed via the CLI. So a builder itself is nothing more than a function that will execute it in a way with the Angular CLI. And to do this, it is basically the Angular CLI that does this, and it's called does this by the architect tool. And the architect tool delegates work to a handler. And this handler, this is what we call a builder. And I would explain this a little bit different, because the architect tool and delegating, that's maybe a little bit hard to understand. So I refer it basically as that the architect tool is basically a task-based executor. Well, builders are the task, and we describe it basically by our code. So you can say that the CLI is a task-based system that runs our builders that does a specific task. To make a builder, you need a couple of things. And basically, a builder needs two inputs. The one is options. And basically, the options are provided by us, the users, or within the Angular JSON. And the Angular JSON is basically a set of configurations or options that, when executed, it will read and just execute a builder. But we can do this also by giving the flags to the CLI. For example, when you do ng-build and you get --prod or --configuration, this is basically an option for a specific builder. And on the right, we see the context. And basically, the context is provided by the CLI. We cannot change this. This is something that's already there, but we can use it. And what you can find here is things like logging or scheduling other builders. So to know a bit more around builders, I asked myself the question, are we using these builders already on a daily basis? And I could say, yes, we are. Because when we run ng-serve, we basically use a builder called dev server that spins up something to serve our JavaScript and index HTML. And if we do ng-build, we have a browser builder just that uses Webpack under the hood to execute it and compile our TypeScript code to JavaScript code. And as you see here, ng-lint and ng end-to-end, we got builders for that. It was previously the TS lint builder and the protractor builder, but these are deprecated. And as builders are functions, they are also easily interchangeable because we can configure them in the Angular.json, and we can switch them out. So basically for ng-serve, we could do something with the custom Webpack server. Or for example, ng-build, we could use the ngx build plus builder from Manfred Steyer. And as recommended these days, we got the ESLint builder from James Henry to help us with our linting rules within our project. So here's where the cool part is. We can just mix and match different builders for different commands for our project, and we can heavily or easily configure that by using the Angular CLI or the Angular.json file or the Angular CLI parameters. So how are we using these builders? So we already mentioned ng-build app. That's basically what we do a lot of times a day, or ng-serve. But there is like a specific need for this and a specific way how this works. And ng-build, the build part, is basically called within the CLI a architect target. And the other one is basically easy for us. It's the project name, and that's 9 out of 10. It's the app or the libraries that we have. But why is it called the architect target? Well, that's actually also pretty easy because the build part is basically within the Angular.json under the architect. So for every project that we got some similar JSON configuration as here, and all our builders are always within the architect key. So if we look at serve, that's also present there, and there is basically our configuration. And as already stated, our projects are always at the top. So within the project folder, we get the keys for the project names, and this is basically how it works. However, there's also another command that we don't use that frequently, and that's basically ng-run. And with ng-run, we can do a couple of things. One, we can build our production app, and that's done by basically saying, okay, I want to ng-run my project with a specific architect target with some configuration. And as of today, the ng-build --prod is replaced, and you can do -- configuration. And depending on which you want, development or not, you can use that. And that's basically what ng-run does. So with ng-run, we can just say, okay, I want a specific project with a specific builder with a specific configuration. And this is where actually the cool things come, because now we also know that we could just add a key and add our custom builder and do something for us in our project. And I want to show you a bit around how you can make a custom builder so that you really can understand what the concept is. And I will just go briefly over it, and I show some code examples here. If you have, of course, any questions, just chime in here. Happy to answer them. Let me just quickly go over it. Of course, we need a repository somewhere. So we do npm init, git init, and we need 2 dependencies. And these 2 dependencies are basically TypeScript and Angular dev-kit /architect. And this is a needed dependency. So it's not a dev dependency. It's a dependency that we need when we publish our custom builder. And the 4th step is basically doing some npm scripts for building and testing our packages. And as it is just TypeScript, we can do this in several ways. I mean, and just use the one that works for you. If you want to use Jest, go ahead, use Jest. If you want something else to test your scripts with, go ahead. It doesn't matter. It's all up to you. So for a builder, we need a couple of specifics next to the dependencies. And one of the things is a builders.json in the root of your package. And this builders.json needs to be referred somewhere. And that's done in the package.json. So in the package.json for your, how do you say it, your package, npm package, I mean, you need to add the builders property. And there you can reference the builders.json. You can also switch it somewhere else, doesn't matter. But for this example, I just said, okay, the builders.json is in the root. And when we add the builders.json, we need to add something there. And that's basically a property called builders, where you can say, okay, I got a couple of builders in this package. For this example, I just made one, and you give it a key. And this key is basically the one that you say, okay, this is the name of my builder. And in my case, that's optimized. And why it's optimized, you will see in a bit. You refer the implementation, and the implementation is basically where the JavaScript code is. Then you define a schema, and the schema is our options. So when we have, for example, some options that we want to, or that we need in the builder, you need to define a schema. And I will show the schema for the example I made a little bit later. So if you have questions around that, just ask them. But basically, it's like a blueprint, like, okay, these options I can handle, and it's a number, it's an array, and there needs to be maybe a required property, these kinds of stuff. You can all add that to the schema.json. And the last thing is a description, because when you share stuff on the open source or within your team, it's probably easy for everybody to understand what this builder does. And that's where description comes in. And in the example I got, we are going to optimize some images for web quality. So now we come to a little bit of code. It's still pretty easy. We add a index.ts file, and we use the create builders function. And within the index.ts, you just make your functions that you want to use for your builder. In my case, we're going to do some optimization for images. So we'll see some code that just optimizes the images with some parameters there for the quality. But you need to create builder function because that's a wrapper. And the create builder function is basically outputted by the Angular DevKit package, and it will wrap your custom functions for the builder to hook it up basically with the Angular CLI. Because as I said earlier, there's a task-based system, and we need to hook our builder up with the task-based system so that it knows when it needs to be executed basically, or processed. And that's what the create builder function does. So it's basically pretty simple. It's a wrapper where the options come in and where the context is, and you just add some code there. Okay, so we now know that we know the purpose of builders. We know that we can create custom builders. So let's switch over to some code. We're going to optimize images, and that's with the command ng-run app for a project with optimize. And before we go to the part where we are going to execute it, let me show my builder basically. Okay, if the font isn't good, just send us a message and I will bump it up, and I try to repeat a couple of things. If it's good, then I just continue. Okay. I got just a simple TypeScript project, nothing fancy. I will share the repository at the end so you can have a look yourself. Basically, in the package.json, I give it a name. I did some outputting for my index.json and some configuration there, and I added the builders.json file as needed. As you see, some scripts, which is nothing special. Basically, it's just compiling TypeScript code and doing some prettier work and that kind of stuff. So the code itself, we got in the source folder, we got three things. One is the index.ts, the other one is schema.json, and the schema.ts. So let's go first to the schema.json so that you good understanding of the options. When defining a schema.json, you need to add a couple of things. So first, you need to add this convention where ID can be anything you want. It should be unique. I need to say, but you can refer to any name. You can make it custom name. You can add a title so that you maybe can explain a bit more to people that are watching this. And you need to add a couple of properties. And in my case, I added 4 properties: one for the quality, one of the max width of a image, one for the folder and extensions. And if you look at, for example, folder, I say, okay, if this option is given, it should be of the type string. And the description around it is that it is the asset folder where our projects, our pictures are stored. And it defaults basically to my source asset folder, which is pretty similar in our Angular workspace. And I did a similar thing basically for extensions. The max width, it's a number, so you can't put anything else there. And I got a quality. It's all in similar ranges. You can make this a string, you can make this an array. I think you even can do regex so that you can validate that it is a specific string. And you also, which is pretty good to know, you also have a required property. And the required property basically is needed when you say, okay, when you run this builder, you need to have a quality option, for example. So you need to fill in the quality. So you can add that to the required array. And then the validation within the Angular CLI will say, okay, when you run this builder and there is no quality option defined in the Angular.json or provided with the Angular CLI in the shell, in the command shell, then it will say, okay, but I need this property here, so please provide it to me. So the schema.ts is basically a blueprint of the same options here, and I just made it up myself with a simple interface. I've seen people doing this with code generation, so that it will be defined from the schema.json. I do just 9 out of 10 times just making this myself because I find it a bit easier. Let's go then to the real code, which is the execution for the builders one. And let me collapse a couple of things just to go briefly again over everything. As I already showed earlier, here we can see that I have some imports basically where the create builder function is here. I basically export this as a default and I say, okay, create builder, when you wrap something up, please wrap up my execute function, which is my implementation of the code I want to run. And here I got a couple of things defined. I added a lot of comments, so people that are watching, go ahead and look at the repository so that you know a bit more. Again, I got the options because that's always needed, and I got the builder context. And the input options, I defined it as a type. I extended the schema, which is the schema.ts, and I extended the JSON object for this. So as I already mentioned, when you run the context, you can see that I can just add or just use the logger that's within the CLI, and I can say, okay, when we start running this function, just print out in the warning the starting optimization. And then I just do a couple of things. With a lookup pattern, I just look up some files that are matching basically my folder and my extensions part. I will output with the logger again that we found a couple of matches. And then from that point, I basically do optimize the images and I will swap them out. So that's pretty easy. It's pretty easy code. I do some, again, I do some logging so that we can see that it is finished. And that's basically what it does. So it's nothing special, but I think it's a good example on what you can do with a builder. It doesn't have to be an image optimization. You can think of anything you want that's needed for your project, but this gives a good understanding of what you can do with it. So how does this work within a Angular project? First, let's go over to the repository again. I added my imagization package already, and I added this on the architect target. So we got a project, and within the architect, I added my own optimized key. And there I say, okay, when you run this command, which is already stated by the Angular CLI language service that's in my VS Code, Then when you run, go to the builders package and use the builder called optimize. And that is the one that we defined in our builds.json key. So if there were two builders, you could do optimize and, for example, Electron or whatever. There you can do this. I did this manually. What you see a lot of things is that you would do a ng add of your package with some schematics, and then this will be done for you. I just added manually. You can do it manually. You can make a schematic. Schematics are out of the scope. If you have questions, just ask. But this is basically what it does. And you see that I left the options empty. But within the options, I can do stuff like I want to do a max width. Max width. And then I can say, okay, this needs to be, for example, 100 or 1,000 or whatever. And here we can define like the global options that when somebody does ng-run this command with this builder, it will always use these options unless somebody overrides this. Let me just remove it so that you that we're good to go here. This is a basic, simple Angular project, nothing special here, but within the assets folder, I just placed a couple of pictures. And we're going to see that these pictures are going to change in a couple of seconds. Okay, now, well, let's see what happens. Let me do this so that you can see what's going on. I will do ng-run. And again, I just say, okay, I want to run from the project this specific build command. As you can see, we see the start optimization that was outputted at first. It found apparently 3 matches, and it said, okay, well, I finished optimizing the images. And now you will probably won't see it good because it just changed the width. So let's give a better example. And let's close this one down. What we're now going to do is say, okay, run it again, but now downgrade the quality of a picture to the lowest level that you can do. Again, it finished. And now you probably can easily, let me see if you guys can see it correctly. You can probably easily see that the quality of the picture is gone. So, and this is basically with the Angular CLI, the arguments flags. But let's say you want to do the quality within your defaults, as somebody else is going to run this from your team, for example. Let's add quality like this. Okay, change that, save this one. Always exciting doing these things when you didn't test it up front. And again, you can see that the image is again changed from the original quality to a lower quality. So this is how you can, for example, do the baseline. Like, this is what I want to do when this builder is done for my complete team. And if you have specific needs, or you have in your CI/CD, you want to do something else with the options, you can just maybe do something like this with the arguments there. Okay. Oh, this is the wrong. Give me a sec. Okay, we're back basically to our demo. So where can we use these kinds of builders? Well, as I showed, you could do something on image optimization if you have, for example, a publicly facing Angular app and you want always to downgrade the images so that everybody that it's good for web quality, for example, from high definition to web quality. You can use something like this, or you can make something like this. But you also can think of, if you want to do some experimenting, you can also say, I want to use a test framework and I want to hook it up in a way. And then you can do this with a builder, because that's what the Angular CLI also does under the hood. The Karma builder is basically hooking up Karma for the Angular application. One of the best fitting use cases is probably a release your project builder. And I'm just giving it a name here, but a lot of teams, a lot of people are releasing in a similar way, deploying it to a Docker container, deploying it to a static content or making some configurations just before it will be deployed. Here is where a builder could be easy for your team. You can easily just make a builder that does these changes, copies files over, or does anything you want, and you just have to use the Angular CLI ng-run your custom builder for releasing your project, and it will give the results for your whole team. And another thing that Aristus, I need to say his name correctly, he was previously here on the show, is to run your app on a desktop app. And it's the NGX Electronify builder. You have already seen it in this community. I helped them a bit around this project. But this is giving a good example of what you all can do with builders. There's a lot of things you can do around it. So to sum a bit up on what builders are, so that we all know where we are, what we did, and what we can do with it. So builders are basically task-based function. It can be used for any kinds of process that we want related to the workspace. It's not a schematic. That's a completely different thing, because schematics are basically touching and changing project files. And with project files, I mean, for example, the Angular.json or the TS files or these kinds of stuff. That's the purpose of schematic, changing, adding, migrating stuff. And builders are basically executors where things can be done with the project, so with the workspace that we are in at this thing. As it are just functions, as it is just TypeScript code, you can do almost anything. If there is something you want to do with it and there is an npm package, you can probably do it. It's one of the main building blocks within the CLI. So the builders concept and the schematic concept, because they are pretty similar, they even use this pretty similar API. These are the main builder blocks within the CLI. And if you have something like a builder for example, releasing your project, it will save you a lot of time. And I would recommend these things to make it and test it in your environment to see where you can easily save time. I got some resources here for people who are interested. I think a good resource is just the Angular.io website. They got a lot of explanation there. There's a good talk from Santosh around Angular builders. Mike Harrington did a ng-Conf talk. You can look at a builder that I created for the X-Layers team, where we stamp basically your Angular app with a specific version. I made a builder, the deploy builder to AWS. And again, Aristus made the Electronify builder. And that's it basically. And I want to thank everybody for being here. The link to the repository, if anybody wants to see my code, is here. And I'm happy to share my slides if you want, and just let me know. And if there's any questions or anything you want to know around Angular or schematics or builders, let's go. Let's do the Q&A on that part.
Thanks, Jeff. So thanks for the session. So that was a really good demo, to demonstrate the builders. So let us see if there are any questions from the team. So guys, if you have any questions, you can post it in the comments. We're happy to pick it up.
Yeah, do you have any questions? I'm also happy to answer your questions next to the people in the chat.
Actually, currently not Jeff. So I have tried. So I haven't tried to build, these builders. So maybe I'll give it a try and we'll let you know if I get a blocker. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Okay. So I think there are no questions. So guys, like if you have any questions, like those who are watching after this session is being recorded and it's going to be available in YouTube, you can if you have any doubts, you can reach out to him in his Twitter handle. So this is Twitter handle, so Jeff5OZ, and yeah, he'll be happy to help. So thanks, Jeff. So thanks for your time. So thanks for a session, like a valuable session for our community. So thanks for that.
Sure, happy to be here. And again, if anybody has any questions later, just ping me on Twitter, and I'm happy to help.
Yeah. Thanks, Jeff. And yeah, so those were all the things, guys. So today we had only one session. So as I mentioned earlier, like we have a meetup group. So this is our meetup group, meetup.com/talkify community. So here we will have all the events being created for our meetup group. So whenever we create an event, like there'll be a join button here. Like if you go to this link, there'll be a join button here in this community. If you click join, whenever we create any events, like you'll be notified. So just go to this meetup.com/talkify community, and there are around 461 members already. Like you can just go to this meetup group and you can click join. So you'll be notified of our future events. And yeah, so that's it, guys. So stay safe, and we'll meet next month. So thank you, thanks everyone.
Bye bye, everyone.